box. Anything that we do is me customizing that according to how I would shoot it. But I want to customize the consumer experience, because the whole ethos, the whole nucleus of Nock On is getting people better in archery. Looking at your climbing spurs.
That reminds me,
I've got a set of those. I used to hunt out of them.
really?
Yeah, we never had like screw-in steps when we had the very first like lock-on stands. We just had the lock-ons, and then my uncle gave me climbing spurs.
Really?
Yeah, when I was 12 or 13. And that's kind of what we do. We just call it running up a tree.
So you would climb up every morning that way?
Yeah. There was no like climber stands then. So you'd literally just run up the tree with a belt and then put a lock on, go down and get your stuff and go back up.
Really? And you didn't have screw-in steps or nothing?
No, you just did that. It was like like old man, like before the old, rubber hosed climbing stands.
I actually asked my dad here a while back, I was like, how did you allow me to do like what I did as a kid? Because my parents didn't hunt.
Yeah.
And we lived kind of like this place here. We lived in a river bottom. So I could just walk from the house back into the river bottom and set up stands. And I got garage sale tree stands, like bought them for probably $10 somewhere.
Yeah, dude.
And I was a kid. I have no idea how those stands stayed in the trees.
Or how we're alive.
100%. And no inReach or cell phone, or if I would have fallen out, they wouldn't have missed me until the middle of the night.
I know.
And I would steal nails out of his, not steal, but I mean, I'd take nails out of like his nail shed.
Yeah.
And like hanging on a tree, and I like pound those into the tree, and then they're like bending. So like you're pulling yourself up because you don't want all your weight on your little spikes, because it was crazy.
So the first time I bought like myself a tree stand, it was more than I had money for. So I didn't have enough to like get my tree pegs. And I was like looking at a bunch. I was at a Gander Mountain, and they were all like in boxes, and there was like,
yeah.
If you remember the first screw-in pegs, they were like, didn't they say like easy peg? And they were never like, none of them were never real easy to get in, by the way.
I remember having to pre-drill the tree.
Exactly. So there was like these like really big ones that were like whatever they were back then, like say $5 a piece. And then there was like another box that was like $3 a piece. And the guy was like, those are a lot harder to get in the tree. He said that's why the more expensive ones, he goes, that point you'll like really appreciate it. So I was like, okay, thanks. And then once he left, I kind of went like, I'm just going to get these right here for $1.50.
Yeah.
Well, I went and like screwed on the first 4 to like then go up. But as soon as I put my foot on the first one, it just bent flat to the tree because they were all bow holders.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Dude, yeah, I was like, maybe a teenager. I don't know. Like, I was probably like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
So and my dad wasn't taking me hunting either. So I was like going on my own. So I literally had the red rubber coated,
yes,
like garage hangers. And that was like what I thought was going to be my tree pegs until obviously the first 4 bent flat to the tree, and that was it. And then I had to go back to the climbing spurs.
I generally picked my trees based on which ones I thought I could use the branches best to climb up. Like it wasn't based on scrapes I found or, it was like near a trail, but yeah, it's crazy. How is
more of us not dead?
I have no, and I didn't have a harness. No.
I used to record on like the VHS.
Yeah, the one on your shoulder.
Yeah. So I've got like a tape of that. Me and my buddy that still works at Matthews, and I was like watching these old videotapes of us, and we were like, I filmed him going up to get into the tree because we were like building hunting show, like not shows, but we were filming ourselves.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, we were just running 25 foot up a tree, holding a bow.
Yep.
Holding your rattling antlers, using limbs half the time.
Yep.
like single chain on.
Yeah.
Like when I was watching these like old home videos a couple years ago, I was just like, oh my God, dude. Like how it's almost like those people you see on the buildings. It's like, it's not in your brain that this is stupid.
Yeah,
so
no.
You're just doing it. You're just running up trees, going up, going down a couple times, go up to get your bow, go down.
I remember trying to get like the link connected and you couldn't quite get it. So then you back off and then your stand is like
they were the
hanging.
Worst, dude. They were the worst. Hang-ons back then, especially the chain, it was you were either like one chain, you were either half a link short or you were one bad shift on the stand and that was it.
What would happen too is like you'd find the perfect one. Like you'd lock your link in like perfect and you get in there and you hunt it all season and it like settles down the tree a little and then you go to try to get it off the tree and it's like welded to the tree because it's like sunk down from your weight.
Oh yeah.
And the tree grew and it wiggled and like trying to get those stands off the tree with the
most
chain
people
in.
didn't.
No, and you're right. I'll bet you money you walk back there's still some of those old stands
for sure. Because I cannot believe how many times I'll go to a brand new like area and I'll scout. I'll kind of scout just based on appearance, or I'll scout based on like what I see on my HuntWise or whatever. And then I'm like, this is the spot. And then you'll go there and take freaking 2 hours to like get the perfect stand in place. And then you're sitting there for like the first 20 minutes and you look over and like there's an old lock on like 2 feet away and you're like, dude, why didn't I just walk around and look? Because the old timers knew.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the old time, there's always remnants of a stand.
Yep.
In like timeless good spots, at least for whitetails.
No, it's 100% true. There's several back here behind our house where my boy walks back there and hunts. How did you? I mean, you were a kid and you were back then doing it same as me with a tree stand, trying to figure it out. Who did you have some guys in town that you were asking questions of or mentoring you a little bit, or like who got you into it?
My grandfather and my uncle got me into hunting the most. My uncle Kenny, who I think a lot of people who watch what we do have seen him. He definitely mentored me and my cousin both. You know, my dad, just coming back from, you know, what he went through and in Nam and everything, we would do some outdoor stuff, but it, you know, wasn't like his thing.
Right.
Whereas I just like could not get enough of it.
Right.
It just consumed me. You know, any type of shooting just consumed me. It really did.
Really? Bows and rifles, guns?
Yeah, I loved it. I worked, so like one of my first jobs was in a trap house. You know, I'd be, because I could, if I loaded clays all day, I got 2 boxes of shells and 2 rounds at the end of the weekend. So I'd just sit in that little house, you know, and it'd be like, and then you'd just be like, and it flip around, and then as it's like, you're like dropping another one on there and getting back again, you know.
Yeah.
So that was one of my first deals, just so, and then on Sunday I could shoot 2 25 rounds, like with my shotgun. I had, you know, 870 Express, baby.
Yep, Remington 870. Yeah, the old pump.
Yep, I'd be out there just pumping that sucker, dude.
Dude, those guns, my buddy had a Remington 870, and I had like a Mossberg 500 or whatever, and they had a ranch about 30 miles from where I lived, and I'd go over there, and his grandpa was actually the Marlboro Man. Just this old cowboy they found at a rodeo, took pictures of him in like 1940, and all of a sudden he got like a letter saying, hey, do you mind if we use these pictures and blah, 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 because he was smoking a cigarette running the chute gates out at the Augusta Rodeo.
So he's literally
the Marlboro Man.
Oh my God.
And so anyway, they had this ranch and whatnot, but he had all his old shotgun reloading stuff up in the roof of their house. And my buddy, and there again, I don't remember anybody showing us how to do it, but we would go up and load shotgun shells like all night. Yeah. And then they had these giant culverts full of swallows. And the swallows just make those mud nests, you know? And he'd stand on one end of the culvert on this county road, and I'd stand on the other end, and we'd shoot swallows like all day because they just keep coming back to their nest, but they fly 1,000,000 miles an hour and they're tiny. And we'd pick up all our shells and we'd go back to the house and we'd load all night long and we'd go back to a different culvert the next day. But I remember that old Mossberg and that old Remington, dude, those things we abused those thousands of rounds through those things.
I had me and some of my friends, this was back when I worked at Matthews too. We had some T-shirts made up that I forget what they said because we had like an embroidery department at Matthews. I think we made up some shirts that said like, I thought it said like, it either said PETA or it said like pet, like P-E-T.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd go and knock on people's doors and we would just say, hey, we're here from pet and we're here to do pigeon extraction. And they're like, what? And then we just say, yeah, we offer a service where we do pigeon extraction from all your barns and everything because it's dairy land, back where we were from. And so they would always just be like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do that. That's cool. So we'd just have our shirts and we'd go up into into those old barns. And normally where you got that one chute on the end, everyone would just get out there, their plugs out, and then you'd be like, all right, here they come. You just start chucking stuff up and get those pigeons coming out. And it was just like, pull. Here comes one. Boom. Boom.
When you said that, it reminded me so much of the old wooden plug. Take the wooden plug out.
I know.
First thing, get rid of that.
Yeah.
But don't lose it because during duck season, you had to have it in because you can only have 3 shots during waterfowl. But, man, for pigeons but that's hilarious you guys were doing that. Man.
Yeah, because I remember actually we went, me and the PET team, because we'd slay like trucks.
That was the original knocking on doors.
yeah, it was. So I remember we went out duck hunting, and I was like sitting there, and I like loaded one in the top, and then put one in the bottom, another one in the bottom, and I kind of like just put my normally I'd put my finger in, to check to see if you had your second in there because it would like stop about half thumb deep.
Yep.
And it just like kept going, so I like slid another one in there, and I go, oh man, I don't have my plug. I didn't realize you can just break a stick off, and we just put a stick in there, so I'd be legal. So
I when I was a kid in high school, may have done some duck and goose hunting with the plug in my pocket.
Yeah,
you're the guy in the blind just keeps boom, boom.
Yeah.
Oh,
there was
man.
just never like, I feel like there wasn't as much accessible information for rules too.
Yeah.
I definitely did things I didn't know like were a serious.
Yeah.
And I mean, not like super serious, but there's certain, that's one of the scariest things for me as a hunter, hunting multiple states, is that there is not a universal game law.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of confusing. It's like you go to one state and you have to sign your tag as soon as you shoot or notch the tag. Some of them you have to have it signed before you go, and if you sign it, then you validated it. Whereas if you're in that other state where you're not supposed to do it till after you have a pre-validated, it's not legal. Like there's just all those, and then with the lighted knocks, and then
wearing like even with wearing orange, like in one state, so many cubic inches of orange, and then the next state you walk literally across the state line. Now you have to have an orange hat on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's weird because, and it's actually really scary as a brand owner. If you accidentally commit that, and now you have a game violation, and it's like, oh, John Dudley of Nock On committing game violations, and it's like, it sounds terrible,
yeah,
but it would be so easy to have happen.
It's definitely it definitely crosses my mind. Like it'd be easy to make an honest mistake. Like I used to hunt right where South Dakota and Montana meet. What I would do is I'd hunt one side based on if there were antelope on this side of the road, I'd be hunting South Dakota. If there were antelope on that side of the road, I'd be hunting Montana.
Yeah.
So I was like having to remember every single time, because I was always hunting in a blind, if I go to the Montana side, I'd have to take my sight light off and take my lighted nocks out. So I had like a quiver with regular nocks, and then I would but honestly, in my opinion, lighted nocks and having a light for your pin, they actually help you be more ethical, because one, they confirm shot placement, especially out here where there's ranchers. Being able to find your arrow is important. Like, you know, a freaking big tractor tire on some of these freaking machines they've got.
Or just their cows walking around. If there's a broadhead laying in their field, ends up in the foot of a horse or a cow, or and I don't actually know. Here again, like, this is an example of it. I actually don't know. I thought lighted nocks got passed as okay here.
I think it's every state. I just heard. I think
are legal now.
Yeah, I think lighted nocks are a go.
But I know sight lights.
Don't hold me to that.
Sight lights,
was secondhand information.
I think sight lights though are still illegal here. You know.
Yeah, it's a weird rule because it's the way it's worded. I don't like any game law that's at the discretion of the officer, because, you know, although I've got officers that are freaking awesome, and I tell people all the time, you know, if I'm going to a new place, first thing I do is I call the local warden. I'll call the main office and I'll say, hey, who's the warden for such and such county? And they'll tell me, and I'll call them and say, hi, I'm John Dudley. You know, I'm going to be coming hunting. Is there any common things that you should tell me about? I want to make sure I'm following the rules. They really appreciate that. And a lot of times they're offering, you know, how to help too.
Yep.
So, but yeah, there's like these small words. So like, I think in Montana, I called one time several years ago because I think it said, no electronical device to aid in the taking of game, right?
Right.
I think that's how it read.
Yep.
So I asked about sight light. I asked about lighted nocks, but then I'm like, so can I use a rangefinder? Because a rangefinder is battery operated and it definitely aids in.
Right.
And they're like, oh yeah, for sure. And I just said, okay, well,
yeah,
we're like, you know, that is an electronic device. Like, what about my flashlight?
But
we accept. They won't write you a ticket for that one. They'll accept that one. And I'm like, okay, well, that kind of is a bummer where there's not like a clear list of like what you can have.
And with the rangefinders here again, I don't have one of these just yet, but with the rangefinder deal, now there's that software that communicates from the rangefinder to your rifle scope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you rangefind it, it'll enter in your dope and all your stuff into your scope and give you your drop. I mean, it adjusts your where your crosshairs hit, and I'm pretty sure that's actually illegal in Montana. That communication because your scope, and again, I think it's like having a battery in your scope or on your sight light, like anything battery operated. Yeah. Like you said, a rangefinder is okay, but then all of a sudden a rangefinder that talks to your scope is not.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets weird, you know, and then, you know, the different rules out there in different states with silencer, you know, with, you know, suppressors.
Yeah, I could imagine. I've literally never.
You don't have a suppressor on your bow?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty quiet as it is. But no, I couldn't imagine, like, even on the gun side, I guess it would be
even more rules.
Yeah, even more rules.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
And you're right. Back when we were coming up hunting, there was you really only got the information either in your little book if you read it or from the guy you were like learning from. You know, but if you were learning from a real cowboy, you could be led astray as a 15-year-old in a hurry.
Yeah, you grow up in the Mississippi Delta with your kin telling you the rules when, you know, you're kind of just out in the middle of
who's the government to tell me what I can do?
Trailer Parkville. Yeah. Yeah. No, my first like hunting experience with my dad was actually, he got me like a 22 Marlin. I remember I was maybe 6 I know I was 6 cause at 7 we left, but I remember we just like go park on top of a bridge. And this is down in the Mississippi Delta. We'd park on top of a bridge. He'd kind of sit on the back of the truck drinking a beer, and I would just be sitting there shooting turtles. And when I'd shoot a turtle, you know, if it'd float up, he'd just kind of be like, all right, you know, put that safety on. And he'd like go down there and like go down there on the sandbar and grab that thing, you know.
Really?
But yeah, because we grew up, I mean, we gigged frogs and turtles and brim, like, and catfish was like a pretty staple part of the diet in like a bologna sandwich.
Yeah. Jeez.
Plain bologna.
That's
very different than currently.
A little different than elk and whitetail.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of elk and whitetail and all that, season is right around the corner now. Do you have some pretty good hunts coming up you're excited about?
Well, I'm hoping for some last minute cancellations. I was 0 for 10 drawing, so I had to buy a couple tags this year. I'm gonna go back to Canada again. I always like Canada. It's just a bow hunting mecca, I think. But I'm gonna have to just see how it plays out. I have a few tags that I'm doing with a few friends, but I'm hoping, which normally happens, people call and say, hey, I don't know what your schedule's like, but this person can't come. They've already paid their deposit. So, if, you can get this thing for half the price or whatever. I normally bake on the fact of I don't have to put in for vacation. Thankfully, like my calendar is
hunting.
My calendar is I'm going to be somewhere. And if not, I'm going to be like recuperating and hoping Sharon feeds me something so I can like be on a normal schedule. Cause once hunting season goes, I'm grinding. I'm gone a lot.
Well, speaking of grinding, I mean, your tax schedule, it's insane, dude. When I look online, I'm like, I don't know how you guys do it. I mean, and not just you up on the mountain shooting, but then you're also packing a booth along and employees and the whole 9 yards. I mean, what did you start in April? March,
I think. Yeah, I want to think March was Oklahoma. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and we miss a few. There's one that overlaps my anniversary, and then another one. Two other ones I can't have a Nock On range. Last year we went and took over Black Rifles range in South Dakota, but we can't have our own range at a couple of the venues because they can't hold an extra one. So.
Yeah.
And honestly, it gets tough. It gets tough when there's 2 or 3 events in a month and we're running a business. And I also I have a lot of things that I do that aren't Nock On. I mean, I work for a lot of other companies as an independent or as a consultant. So, my time is stretched out even more than what people see.
That's actually the part that I'm trying to figure out how to balance myself, and I kind of marvel at how you guys do it because, it looks glamorous and it is cool. It's fun to go to these events, it's neat to meet the people, but this entire time you're gone, there's also a business back at home that needs managed and needs run.
Yeah,
that's it's
a machine. It's a machine that's going and. Yeah, it's like little things when you're not there, you're relying on the team to do it, but then all of a sudden you come back and realize no one ordered tape or something. You know what I mean? It's like something stupid. It'll be it'll be something small or just for me, if I'm doing R&D on a bow, I need honestly R&D on any type of archery product. It means that I have to put years of use through it in 3 weeks time.
Right.
And back at a lot of the bow companies I work for, we have cycle machines to where, you can life cycle a bow through a full life cycle, but on some of the stuff that actually requires shooting, not just pulling, there's machines that pull them. There's machines that'll grab an arrow, pull back, let go. There's some machines that do that too, but there's certain things that, you still have to manually put in the effort for.
Yeah.
And honestly, especially for example, like the Levitate, the Unite, the Embark. I mean, you got to remember when I got those bows, it means I need to like check the poundage on the limbs, check the string and cable lengths. Then I would like adjust the serving length so that like on our bows, I really like the cable serving coming down to where people can feed a cable through there or a rest cable through there, rest cord.
Yep.
And not have to tie in another part of, tie that thing in. I'm like I try to make it like out of the package friendly for consumers, but also for dealers too. And those little details take a ton of time. I mean, it's probably like, imagine you having to like redo a new sheath for every single time you had a new knife. You're having to like really put that time and thought in there. And then, we're a small team that is very, very efficient. Mm-hmm. We don't have like someone hired to do packaging, for example. Like we just relaunched our backstrap release and came out new packaging because I really wanted the packaging more consumer friendly because people have questions about it. So I had to like record some videos to where when they open that up, there's QR codes to where they can scan it. Here's how you set it up. Here's maintenance. Here's your first time in the range with it. Here's a day on the practice course. So all those little things, when you see a product, you see like this new product that comes out, you don't realize, we don't sub that out because I'm like so into our products. Anything that we do is me, customizing that according to how I would shoot it. But I want to customize the consumer experience because like the whole ethos, the whole nucleus of Nock On is getting people better in archery.
Right.
That's free education and getting people better in archery, whether it's with inspiring content or whether it's with custom products. And certainly we work with some companies and we like, if there's a great company that makes a good product, I would rather work with that company because they have a very good product. And I also feel like I'm kind of showing respect to that brand too, to say, hey,
it's huge. Like when you made that commitment to work with us, like that's a big deal. It because you have so much respect in the industry, and also you're also putting your name on the line and risking your own reputation and whatnot by working with somebody else. So like when you decided to work with us last year, like that's a big deal. And I can attest to the time that you put in, the involvement, like with our knife that we worked on. I mean, the back and forth and the wanting prototypes to feel and the little changes we make to them and stuff, like that stuff's really truly real. It's not like I just had something and you were like, I'll put my name on that, like that was very important to you. And it says a lot, and it's cool. And that's, I think, why people respect so much of when you put your name behind something, it's like you've put time into that product.
Yeah. I want to use it. I don't want to like offer anything that I don't use myself. And that's the thing. Like I could, so this whole last week I've been on a bit of a bender about arrows, and it stemmed because when I go to tax, I am seeing grassroots consumers of the industry. Mm-hmm. Like it's not my friends that work at this company or that company. It's not any of the companies. These are the people that all of us companies are building products for. These people, these are the people.
Right.
So then when I go there and I see that some of these people, because I don't remember names all the time. I'm actually not a good name person, period. But I remember setups. Like that's the one thing. It's like the thing that I was blessed with and plagued with at the same time is like, I can look at a bow setup and then right away my brain's picking up like what's making them miss. Like I can see problems, somewhere in the system. Mm-hmm. And when I see someone and I remember their gear and then it comes back and I'm like, hey, did you change, you went to a new arrow, huh? yeah, I really wanted to go to 350 grains up front. And I'm just like, all right, cool. And then, I'm standing behind them, triple digits, big, I'm watching them at Bigfoot. And it's just like, here comes this arrow that's like, they're like trying to push a load out of a rifle that the manufacturer is building that gun based on a load that they think everyone's going to do really well with. It's kind of like lift kits on a truck, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can level a truck or you can do like 4 inches in it, but like once you start going extreme, now it doesn't fit in a parking garage. Now that thing freaking your steering wheel's sideways half the time.
You start wearing out other parts.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. So that's what I was noticing, and I was watching people. So this year, less people hit the dot on Bigfoot than any other year. Like, I mean, I would sit there and like, come on. And people have better shot techniques than I've ever seen. Like the amount of people that come up and have technique that I didn't have after 10 years in the industry. Like I'm envious of how awesome people's form and technique are. Yeah. But the good thing and the bad thing about teaching someone how to work on their own equipment, like there's definitely a good thing. I think people have to have confidence in their equipment, and if they work on it some, then they have that confidence. But it also like there's tinkerers, there's some people that just, they tinker more than they practice. And the thing is like, I can tell you right now, like I love guitars. Like during COVID, actually I should have started during COVID, but it was like the year after COVID. I had someone come out, Mark Schenker from Kicks came out, mm-hmm. and I did some lessons with him and stuff. And I told him like, the only regret I have is I wish I would have like actually learned to play guitar. And he's just like, well, why don't you? And I just said, I don't know. I've just never like put my mind to it. And I said, I'm just either all in or all out with stuff. Right. Well, he sent me a Taylor. He sent me like an all black Taylor. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to commit to this. Yeah. So I have, and I love guitars, and like the only two things I ever buy for myself really are like Air Jordans and sometimes a guitar. And listen, they're all like different. They're all unique, but none of them play themselves. Right. Yeah. I mean, like I can, if I don't have the fundamentals, I can't play that instrument. And so right now there's a lot of people, I think, in the archery community. The good thing is we're making people push the envelope. Like there's goods and bads. We're making people push the envelope. Like I love how hard tacks are, and I love that people go out there. I love the fact that, people are pumped because they only lost one arrow on a range, or some people are just like, I've had the same arrow the whole freaking weekend. Yeah. I mean, that's very different than like at a professional target archery event. Like I don't think I ever like lost an arrow. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I might shoot one in half. Yeah. I need to turn my pro card in if I like lost an arrow. But the thing is, you got to remember like this ASA championship that just happened, like that's 50-yard max. So we're pushing double the max of like a Pro 3D thing, and they're not clear lanes. There's normally trash. It's kind of a free for all. People love that challenge and the fact there's not score, but the downside is it's like because they're trying to get more out of their equipment, they're playing with their equipment more than they're actually just focusing on technique. And
well, so, I think actually you've in a way contributed to this problem. Yeah, because all of your amazing free content has actually, and it really is amazing. Like the amount of teaching and free content that you have out there that no one else in the industry is doing that. It's unbelievable. And it's such a great resource. But what it's done is it's given people confidence to tinker in their shop all winter. And like, I'm going to turn this bow into like a funny car, like a race machine, right? And when I go to TAC next year, like this thing, it's either going to hit with 4,000 foot-pounds of force, or it's going to fly
4,000 feet a second,
like a razor, like a laser, you know?
Yeah.
And as I've actually been witnessing it a little bit here at the shop, because one of our employees, I'm going to call him out, but Matt, and he's doing it for a little different reason. He got a brand new bow, brand new PSE, and he wants to learn how to like set it up and tune it.
Yep.
And so he had a tiny little tear like in the paper that wasn't right. And I was like working around the shop here, and my employees will work on their bows like after work. Mm-hmm. So I'm working and I'm walking around here, and then I'm walking back by, and he's shooting through the paper again, and he shoots it, and I stop and I look at the target, and it's got like a 2-inch tear. Like he was up and right like 1/8 of an inch, and now he's down and left like 2 inches. And I was like, I think you went the wrong way, bud. But he's trying to figure out, and it's funny because he's standing in my shop literally watching Nock On videos and trying to figure out how to tune and shims and this and that, and what he's supposed to be doing. And I was also giving him shit because he was watching your video trying to tie a D loop, and I think he kept tying it the wrong way, and he finally got it. But the point is there's more information than ever, because like when you and I were coming up, like the last thing I ever would have done is tear into my bow or buy a press and try to do anything. But they can watch your videos and start to tinker. But I think I think it's smart with what you're doing on your Instagram right now, because they're doing that, but they actually don't quite understand, the mechanics and the physics behind what happens when you start adding weight or different spine, strength and stuff on arrows. And so it's interesting what you've created and what you've allowed people to do, because there's also so many more capable people today than there ever was before, even to just fix your own D-loop or tie in a peep.
Well, it's made like the archery techs that just go in and apply for a job at a shop. A lot of them have a very good base. Whereas, when I started at my first shop, I didn't know anything. Like the guy's just like, okay, put a new serving on it. I'm like, what's a serving? So I think a lot of these techs that go into the shops, they've got a pretty dang good knowledge. But with information comes, like, there's that carrot of some people really want to like go up in, I guess, just popularity or rank or how they're viewed. So it's like clickbait becomes part of the, I actually was with someone 2 years ago that's pretty well-known YouTuber, and he just told me, he's like, you'd get way more views. Like you need more clickbait stuff. And he's just like, and he kind of gave me an example based on something that I had. And I just said, yeah, that's not me, dude.
Yeah.
We've had people come to the company, and they come in with like, they think is this new idea of, like, hey, if you monetize your platform,
right,
and I'm just like, stop.
Right.
I worked my butt off in the industry, and I worked for some really good companies. And I work for JDA is the business that no one really knows about, but JDA works for several businesses. And I'm like, I bust my ass for that, so I don't have to charge people for Nock On. Like Nock On is my passion project.
Yeah.
And luckily,
you can see it like when you're on the mountain, and it's one of the other things that I marvel at. Like I've camped next to you, like in Utah last year, and you're leaving the camper at like crazy early in the morning. I mean, I was taking Sharon up to the vendor village because you were gone an hour and a half early to get to the course because you wanted to meet the first shooting group on that. And then you're up there all day on that Nock On course shooting with literally every single group that comes by. And it, like when you see the amount of Nock On hats and shirts, and it like comes across that you truly actually want to help people, because nobody else does that.
I think people are fighting for a pecking order, which is natural. Like as a shooter growing up, I had to do that. Like when I grew up, Randy Ulmer was the poster child. You know, Jeff Hopkins was like the poster child. There was, a few women, but like those were the people that were on archery posters. And, Chuck Adams, like those were the people. And so I was just trying to like figure it out. And honestly, I thought like if I win some titles, I can get some clout. And luckily for me, right before I turned pro, this lady, Leah Lonnie, who was the editor of 3D Times magazine. So there used to be a magazine, a 3D Pro 3D magazine called 3D Times. And inside that there was every state was listed and every 3D shoot within that state for that month. So it was like a monthly magazine. Well, when I went to turn pro, I was sleeping out of my car. It was a truck. So I slept out of my truck, and I would normally go to the event and I would just be sleeping like out of my vehicle at this event. And I was 18 or 19, whatever it was. So Leilani came up and she's just like, hey, have you ever like written before? And honestly, I said yes, but I don't even know how I passed the English in high school. If I wasn't the athlete I would have never passed English. Yeah. Like that's just like, I don't even remember going, but I remember this one time for our writing thing, we had an assignment on how to write a short story. And it was like this outline of, okay, you have to have an introductory paragraph, and within the introductory paragraph, you have to grab their attention. You have to sum up what your subtopics are in the body of your thing. You need to give them one lead in at the end of your opening paragraph, give them one lead in, and then you go into your subtopics and your actual material. And then you need a conclusion paragraph that pretty much wraps up the purpose of your main subheads, and then probably finishes off your attention getter. Like that's literally a 9th grade, like how to write a story assignment. That's my right. Like when people say, dude, I love how simple your writing is. That's what it is. So she just said, have you ever written before? And I said, yeah. Cause I'd wrote that one paper. Yeah. And so I started a column called Rookie on Tour. So all I was doing was documenting like what it was like to be a rookie. So I was saying like, got to this event, realized, probably should have got here early, barely got out on the court. It was kind of just like telling a story of what was really going on. But with that, I was also like going up to it gave me the ability to like go up to some pro shooters and be like, hey, Mr. Ulmer, I'm writing this article, Rookie on Tour. So can you tell me what you did to like prepare for this event, Yeah. And I would like use that as my method to like try to drag some information out of these people.
Right.
And that's honestly, that was how it started. I just kept like, honestly following Randy Ulmer around all the time. And eventually I shot with him at like a pro-am the day before. I was still an amateur. Let me think. Yeah, I was an amateur actually. And I got put on Randy's team and we shot together. And then at the end, he kind of told me, he's like, kid, you have the drive to be what you want to be. But he's like, until you stop punching that trigger, you're never going to get where you want to be. And so he took a release out of his pouch and he gave it to me, which was like it was a Revenger that he had like kind of customized, which I still have. And so I learned how to make a surprise shot with that thing. And once I learned how to make a surprise shot, I just like unlocked this whole new level of archery life.
Yeah.
And literally just prior to that, I had started at Matthews. We were a small company. I mean, like the first building was like this big, dude.
Really?
Well, and that wasn't the first. Yeah. That was like
the shop over there.
That was like when the location got moved to Sparta. Like that's pretty much what it was. And we were all walking around going like, what are we going to do with all this space? And then next thing you know, and like I found a few people this last season as well that had old Matthews that had my initials on there, because, you know, when you're at a company and you're going through growth phase, everybody in the company has to do every job,
right?
You know, and we tell people that all the time, you know, where we're at too. I'm like, you know, I want to jump in there sometimes and like see some of this stuff, because, you know, one, a lot of it's like a diminishing skill, it's perishable skill. But yeah, it was crazy to go through that growth and have to be part of like building bows. And then, you know, some days you may have to ship them. Heck, right. I remember building bows. So the Matthews LX, originally this is weird. Originally that bow was going to be a 2-track single cam. It was 2 tracks. So we had all the parts done. This is literally 3 days before ATA show. And back then, all products were launched at ATA. And in my opinion, if the ATA ever wants to resurge itself, the main focus has to be getting the ATA show in the window of time to where bow manufacturers need to launch their bows.
Yeah.
Because then people went to the ATA show. No dealers knew what was new. They were running to booths to see what was new and to try to get their name on the order. And like at that time, I remember when the doors would open at the ATA show, like the Matthews booth, we were always at the far back. You could feel the air pressure pushing on you from humans, like coming.
Yeah.
And so we're only a few days out from the ATA show launching this LX. No one knows what the new bow is. We've got like catalogs done, posters done, everything. And if you go back, you might be able to notice this, but it was a 2-cam. It was actually the Genesis cam.
Okay.
Is what it originally was. Well, we built them. And as you know, in production, what you do with prototypes, once you actually start putting that together on a floor, bugs start to pop up.
Right.
Like, hey, this screw won't align, or like just all this weird stuff, because now you're making stuff out of fixtures. And if a fixture shifts in a machine and all of a sudden, right? So we've been like, that's part of the beginning to production. So 3 days before the ATA, it might've been 2, we build these bows and we built, 100 bows, and it was like me and, our bow builders and Joel Maxfield, like we're building these bows. And then at the end of the night, midnight, 2 a.m, like someone went to pull a bow back, and and we had turned the music off and all the machines were turned off in the building. And all of a sudden it was like this click.
Oh shit.
And we're like, what the heck is that? So like everyone's got their ears down by the thing. And then we just started grabbing bows off the thing. And it was like, holy cow. We have to call Matt. Matt comes running in. He's like looking at it, and there was, I don't know, it was something to do with the 2-cam track and how it, like once it had to be put in a fixture and actually machined, there was something that was not going to work. And so like a long story short, in the matter of 48 hours, Matt completely redesigned the cam to a 3-track cam. We started cutting at like 2 a.m. to cut these 100 cams, all the same draw length. Literally went, so like all of our catalogs and everything are a 2-track cam. Like that's the deal.
Yeah.
It's like take up and freaking string, power and take up are like on the same, it looked like a Genesis cam is what it was.
Well, and that's what people don't understand. There's the manufacturing side, but we actually, Brandon's in here running the board over here, but he does all our marketing. Imagine the marketing nightmare.
Oh, dude.
I mean, the marketing department would be like, what are you talking about? Like,
yes. So we literally have the machine shop cutting cams. They say that they can have those cams done by like 10 a.m. Our purchasing guy, Norm, gets the cams, drives them to Minnesota like the next day, gets them anodized, I think we had to powder coat them so that they would be done. Like, I think we had to like powder coat them fast. So get the cams done. He drives back. So then we've got to strip every bow.
Yeah.
And rebuild. And so then we put them all into this truck and trailer, which was actually Matt's gospel singing. Like, it was his road truck. And so me and Brandon had to drive. We literally drove in to the ATA show at like 6 a.m. and everyone from the company was running out grabbing bow boxes and carrying bow boxes through the show to like, that's it.
To
like
set up.
Yeah. And there's like the new bow, and it was like that chaotic. So I think just coming up through, like, for me, it's been a blessing because I wasn't like awesome. I didn't have great talent. I sucked. I just, I kept going because I didn't like sucking.
Yeah.
So I just like, I had to get better. It was just like a personal thing. So that's why, I like left my football, and then actually I had started a shop. Then Matt offered me the job. My shop was only like 9 months old. Mm-hmm. So I like sell the shop, go up there, turn pro. I'm writing for a publication. I'm, third Matthews sales rep. I'm shooting pro. And, and I'm on 3 different tours, like living out of my car. Like that's how it started. So for me, it's like I was that guy. And so everything the nucleus of every single thing I've worked for, and honestly at this point, Sharon too, because Nock On can't happen without Sharon, because, I'm doing everything people see,
Right.
That's like everything. But when it comes to the products and all that stuff, like Sharon was the one that said, like, you can't be shooting stuff that no one can get.
Right.
Like, bring it out, because I'm answering more emails about why does John use this or that. So that was how it started. And when I go to TAC, I literally see, like, there's guys that walk up and I'll be like, looking a little rough, bro. And he's just like, yeah, I slept in my car, I had to sleep in my, couldn't get a B&B here. They're too expensive. I figured I'd sign up for 3 days and just sleep out of the truck. And I'm like, okay.
I met several people doing that.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, these are my people. These are my people. So this past year, this past year, I guess, when I saw people kind of going backwards because they were like diving too deep in the technical wormholes of arrows, I was kind of just like, all right, everybody, reel this back, because here's the thing. This is what I told you. I'm like, when I landed and we were driving over here, if you would have told me that you've got a new 50-pound recurve and you're going to go elk hunting with that thing, and, you're shooting 40 pounds of kinetic energy or whatever, I'd just be like, dude, I hope you get one sweet.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't even be thinking about this stuff, that's like a recurve. You can almost put any arrow you want into a compound and it's already past that.
Right.
So there's this like major, I don't know, I want to tackle divides right now. I want to tackle divides in, whether someone, says that they want to hunt public or private, or whether they're DIY or outfitter, or whether they're compound, or, even trad. Like, I think trad's cool. I just personally, like, I hunted one time as a trad archer, and I practiced and everything for it. And I remember pulling back on this deer and like getting my arrow down there. And as soon as I let go of the string, I just had this horrible feeling of like, I remember thinking, God, I hope that hits this thing.
Yeah.
It was this feeling of like, I had no idea where my arrow was going to go, but I let it go.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was making a good shot. It's not like I was taking an unethical shot. It's just, I could not have like told you with confidence that this is a 10 ring.
Right.
And when I got that feeling, I thought, man, when you're shooting your compound bow, you range it, you put the pin on it, like you've done everything perfect. Now, granted, there's
just
some
have to execute.
There's some trad guys that are like so freaking accurate. I mean, there's
but I'll bet you they practice more than almost any compound guy.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean,
for
you
sure.
have to.
Yeah, you do.
You have to.
But I just remember for me, I just didn't like that feeling of like, man, if I'm going to be letting go of a string on an animal, I want to know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So I just like went back to compound, but I still see like why people love a longbow, why people love a recurve, why people love Olympic style archery, why some people like love the 3D scene, hey, that's where I cut my teeth. I get it. But I'm also like now getting back to the point where at 47, I can't train to shoot against full-time pros. I'm like trying to run a business. I'm trying to do my personal things for different companies. I'm still trying to write. I'm still trying to do videos. I need family time. So
it's like, it's interesting because like, who cares as far as like with the full-time pros doing their thing and doing the competition and like, that's what they do. That's what they're fully dove into. Like, I actually look at it, you and I are similar from the standpoint that there's custom knife makers out there making the highest end, most unbelievable custom knives out there today. And they're better than I am. Like but they dedicate, and they've been dedicating the last, number of decades of their life to being that good at custom knives. And I mean, you saw, I showed you a custom knife here. Like I can build a pretty nice custom knife. But,
yeah, it looked real cool.
but I've chosen to spend a lot of my time and energy into building this brand and MKC because again, and it's somewhat similar. Like with you do a lot more teaching than I do with Nock On, but it did bother me for a lot of years. I was making $2,000 and $3,000 and $5,000 knives, right?
Yeah.
And I would have all these people around Montana ask me, hey, will you make a knife? Or like, I'd like to get a hunting knife for my kid for Christmas or for my dad or whatever. And it's like, well, damn, if I charge what I need to charge, like it's going to be like $1,000 knife, right? Mm-hmm. For a 15-year-old kid to go hunting.
Yeah.
And then this is like a dad's wanting to buy this that's got a job and he's making $50,000 a year, right? And so like that, so then I would like, especially people I know, I'd charge a little less, but then I'm not really taking care of my family and doing what I need to do. And it bothered me that, I love making those super high-end custom knives, but it also bothered me that people I felt like didn't really have a high quality option at an affordable price.
Yeah.
Because I'd go in the stores and see what was available to them. And I'm like, a company could do better than this and provide, our knives aren't cheap, but they're attainable.
Yeah.
And, with what you're doing, like you could have chosen for the last 20 years to stay pro and be the top shooter on the planet. But I really respect what you've built with Nock On you've built a brand and you've built this website that's it's this resource that's like nothing else out there.
Yeah.
And in fact, a funny story, a guy was telling me he went to a Denver archery shop before he drove over to Utah, and he asked a guy to do a D-loop and do some stuff, and his loop was just kind of worn out.
Yeah.
And he said the guy took it in a little back room, and he was like taking a while, and finally he just kind of moseyed back there, and the guy had his D-loop half tied, and he had a video with you playing. It was like a new Bowtech.
Yeah.
And he was back there trying to tie this D-loop, and the guy was like, give me my bow. I'll tie it on because I can watch the video and do it myself.
Yeah.
But that resource, like literally professionals are using it.
Yep.
And the fact that you have spent that much time and we've done some of it, like it's a time commitment and it's a money commitment. You're paying a videographer and you're paying somebody to edit that stuff. And what you've done with Nock On is so unique and it's so cool. And there's really, like, I can't think of anything like that in the gun world. Like, with that much just information from one person out there, just giving away the information.
Yeah. I mean, Nock On is my passion. Like I'll work, this week, several times this week, I was already working by like 2:45, 3 a.m. I was already like working and making posts and putting some content out there. I'll work longer doing what I have to do so that Nock On's digital platform can still be, the source for people. But also, like, I want to make sure people know, like, like this past year, or I guess it's been a few years now, I went to PSE, which was an awesome opportunity because the one thing I hadn't done was ever just really had my own bow that, was not like just like name on limbs or whatever. I really wanted to like, be part of it. Like when I used to watch, Matt or, the Hoyt team, because I was lucky to have a decade at Matthews, a decade at Hoyt, and my first bow was a PSE, so it was a really, really good fit. But
what was your first bow?
The first one was the NTN.
Okay.
Yeah, just a flagship aluminum model.
No, I meant your first bow. You said your first ever bow was a PSE?
Yeah, so the first...
mine was a Thunderflight.
Yeah, the first one that I ever bought for myself was a Thunderflight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a Golden Eagle, like Hawk Hunter or something.
Yep.
That was like a hand-me-down. I bet it was like 5 inches too long or something. But that like Thunderflight was the first thing that I ever bought for myself, and it was a PSE from like Gander Mountain, steel cables and everything.
Yeah, I mowed lawns and I was selling knives for, I think my knives were around $40 or $50 at that time, and that was my first ever piece of hunting equipment that I bought that was like serious.
Yeah.
And lobbing those old aluminum Easton arrows out there, and I thought I was dropping bombs from 40 yards.
Well, it was. I mean, it was like, you were lucky to get your pin down to 40 or 50 yards.
Yep.
Like, that's just how it was. And that's the other thing. It's like most of what I killed was during an era where there wasn't this crazy debate about how heavy of an arrow you need.
Right.
Because honestly, if an archery shop gave you some axis, you just went out and killed stuff with it. It was like, I think people start to push the cutting diameter of the broadhead too far. And there's definitely, people have to work around patents a lot of times too. So there's some broadheads out there that just aren't good designs. You just I look at them like, well, that thing's going to whistle. Like you got a string jumper just because of audible sounds. Or I'll look at one and be like, a fixed blade with that much surface area, that thing's going to plane. It's gonna plane. So I feel like our equipment from an efficiency point of view is about maxed out. Like it's maxed out. We need to take advantage of that. I mean, it's freaking awesome. Like I used to shoot an arrow that was in the mid 4s, and that was back when bows, like everybody was fighting for 300. My arrow was like in the mid 4s.
Yeah.
And I could have a hunting arrow around 270 or 280 maybe. But as the bows have become more efficient, I've actually increased my arrow weight, but kept my speed and everything like in that window of where I really liked it. So I have increased my arrow weight, but I've increased my arrow weight relative to the progress of the equipment,
Right.
So I didn't go too extreme with it. And it's a subject that's always going to have debate. There's always going to be like, well, this is better, that's better. I just feel like I want people to know the information, and I want them to kind of think of it logically too. Cause like I can get lost reading. I just read a couple doctorate papers on arrow flight. And I mean, it's pretty deep stuff for me. Like even for me, I'm just like, if you're just looking at it from like a PhD in physics, it's complex.
It's like when you dive into metallurgy papers for steel, like
Right.
You're talking scientist stuff.
Yeah. So I just kind of I just took my arrows, I fletched two sets of arrows, one with the right helical and one with the left helical. And I started this whole thing by just shooting 6 arrows live. I don't know. It might have been, I don't know. I don't remember how many the first groups were, but I just went live, shot them all, didn't tell anybody what was going on. I went down there, and they're all in an awesome freaking group at 70 meters. And I'm like, okay, here's what's kind of cool about this. For those of you who have been arguing right helical, left helical, what you want an arrow to do when it's coming off a string, downrange, here's the results. You're wasting time on this when in the end, there's several different ways to get to the same exact spot,
Right.
And you can certainly overcomplicate it. And if it's people that are young into archery, your most precious time is on a practice range. That is your most precious time. And here's the thing. Some of the best natural archers that I knew, one of them was Jeff Hopkins. When I came up through 3D, Jeff was freaking amazing. He was one of the best archers that I had ever seen. Had very different technique. I wouldn't coach his technique, but he was naturally he was a winner.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting is even 4 years ago when I saw Jeff, he doesn't set up his own stuff, and right. Back at the time, I think he had a coach Curtis that would do his gear. So what they handed him, he just went and freaking shot and shot and shot and shot. And honestly, it might not have ever even been set up right.
Right.
But the point was that guy,
it.
Because a long time ago, I think Larry Wise told me about a quote from Bud Folks, and it was archery's only a two-step sport. Step 1 is learn to shoot a 10. Step 2 is repeat step 1.
Yeah.
And I gave you lessons, so I know that you heard that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting about that is there's some people that are just a Tiger Woods. They're a natural. They're a Tiger. They're a Michael Jordan.
Right.
They're a Barry Bonds. Whatever. There's some people that are that, and their technique isn't gonna be what you see if you go to a swing coach. You know
right.
what I mean? That technique is built for 99% of the population to be as efficient as possible and to get as close to that guy's raw talent, but with perfectly polished skill.
Right.
And so that's what I try to teach. I don't try to waste time saying, defending, well, so-and-so doesn't shoot that way. Okay, well, do you see anyone else shooting like so-and-so? Because here's the thing. That guy
right.
is a gift.
Right.
He's a gift to the archery community.
Right.
He is that is a natural talent. So,
well, and he might have put a lot more hours into getting as good as he is than you would need to.
Sometimes more, because if the thing is, when you learn improperly, and that's the thing, when it comes to a compound bow, the mistakes that you can make, I posted a picture of Sharon, slow motion shot of Sharon today, and it just shows the launch time of that arrow. In her bow, it's about 21 thousandths of a second. But, with that cam having high let off and low poundage, and a lot of times ladies or kids' bows have lower string tension, it's just not as taut. So, when that release goes off, the release hand's coming back, but the string's still sitting there. And then all of a sudden the cams ramp up and they take it forward. So during that fraction of time, your mistake in your front bow hand, release hand, and facial pressure is going to just completely change the outcome.
It's funny. I saw that post, and it was funny because some people were like, oh, she punched the trigger. And it's well, that's a tension release. There's no trigger. Her thumb is off the trigger. But I think people thought that because they see movement before the arrow leaves. But you responded to one of the comments and said, like, no, bro, that release has actually opened up or is in the process of breaking and opening, and the cams haven't even started to move yet, which to your point, I don't think a lot of people really like fully grasp what you're trying to get at, which is like you can apply a lot of bad shit to that bow in that moment, because it actually lasts longer than you think when it's in slow motion. But you like you say, the wrong pressure on your bow hand, the wrong thing, you too much pressure on your face or whatever.
Yeah.
There's some bad things that are going to happen to that arrow when it leaves, and you're definitely not going to end up with consistency.
And see, what happens is when naturally gifted archers don't know how to work on their setup, they are forced to literally be so freaking repetitive that they can actually shoot bows that are not technically tuned, and still outshoot people. Because if you put a tuned thing in their hands, well, then that's when you're going to just be like, I didn't know that was possible with archery equipment.
Right.
But those people, it's kind of like, you were talking about the dude earlier that like had just a little tear and then he goes through and now he's got a worse one.
Yeah.
So like, that's kind of like what happens if you don't know how to work on your own gear. You almost have to shoot so good that you make it repetitive. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's like
it's like the guy that golfs with the slice. He just knows I hit a slice, so I'm going to slice this baby. But he slices it down the middle every time.
Yeah, like the Happy Gilmore just walks up there and like takes a 3-step whack at it. Yeah, that sort of thing. That's, I hear this a lot, that people say that like the guitarists that we all loved from like 70s and 80s, like, these, because a lot of them have been passing in the last few years. They're like, they got that good because they weren't watching YouTube and like learning the hack of like how to cheat a G chord and a C chord, by moving one finger. Like, these guys had to sit around, they had to like strum and play with each other and like learn.
Right.
And so that's why like some of those just have such an incredible ear to like tone and melodies and everything, because they weren't like synthesized. It wasn't playing it that way. So, I mean, I want to be able to like every single thing I've ever done wrong, I want to be able to talk about it and like hopefully someone can read and try to avoid it. But yeah, like on our website, we have the store. It's really divided into 2 parts. We have the store, but then you can go into a full catalog and you can go into a whole WordPress side of the house to where, you can kind of find everything that you would have to scavenge, Google and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and like all these other spots where we have, different content dropping onto. We always like put it in its home base right there so that
School of Nock.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really, it's cool, and it's incredibly helpful. And and honestly, it's something that's, it's motivating to a brand like ours that we're in a different space, but there's a lot of things, whether it's technical stuff of how to sharpen a knife, or even just understanding. People watch Forged in Fire and they see a knife made in 2 hours and they're like, oh, that's easy. But it's like, there's so much more to it, like, do you know how much hit the cutting room for?
Yeah.
Like, that was shot over a week and a half.
Yeah.
And they watched it in 55 minutes on History Channel,
Yeah.
So there's so much teaching that can happen even in our space that, I think you're definitely an example of what's possible, to share more information, help educate the customers,
What's cool is like when I come here, it's so cool to come to companies within our demographic and not necessarily archery companies. But when you come in, like the amount of companies like MKC that you go in there, well, like, I've got people that reach out from some like Silicon Valley type things, and they'll send pictures like where there's like archery gear. It's like, that's, there's a lot of people that like, they still can bring your bow to work, you know?
Right.
And so it's cool, like down there in the lunchroom, it's like everybody's archery tackle hanging up. So it's really neat that there's people within like our worlds that they are like ate up with bow hunting and archery. Like it just seems like bow hunting and archery is, for some reason, is the commonplace for like a lot of our friend network.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our friend network, it all comes down to like bow hunting or tack.
Yeah. And
like it all comes down to like, that's the common ground. That's the nucleus.
And a lot of those bows down here are owned by people and shot by people so far that actually don't hunt with them because they're not quite confident enough yet, but they still love to shoot.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like golf. I mean, it's a camaraderie thing and it's really kind of cool with our company is like, you know, there's a lot of repetitive tasks, right? You're assembling something, you're packaging something, and to be able to go outside and, you know, if you're standing at a desk and you're looking down all day and your shoulders are tight and everything's, you know, you're just kind of been in this bad posture place for the last 4 hours, and then they go outside and they can just shoot 10, 12 arrows. When you're going outside, you're doing something kind of challenging. You're breaking your mind completely away from what you've been doing, stretching out some muscles, have a little bit of fun. And, you know, every lunchtime there's 2 or 3 people out there. They shoot a couple arrows or they'll shoot it on a break. And then for sure after work, there's 8 or 10 people out there shooting almost every night for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they head home, you know, and I've found it to be something I think that helps break the monotony of some of the jobs that are more repetitive up. And it also gives some camaraderie for people who don't work together. You know, the office next door here is all marketing guys, you know, and it's whether it's video guys or you know, graphic design or whatever, and they don't really commingle with the people downstairs a lot.
Right.
But they can go out and shoot together. And I think it adds some camaraderie in the building that wouldn't exist without, you know, I'm definitely not going to let them go out and all shoot pistols, you know, and we don't have the spot really to do that right here.
Yeah.
They do go out and shoot rifles and getting ready for hunting season out in my horse pasture, but got horses running everywhere and the cows and my wife's dogs want to run over the mountain, but no, it's cool. We actually have got a drop coming up this week of all 3 of the Nock On knives, which is, that's the first time we've ever done that.
I didn't know that. Nice.
All 3 are coming out. Well, hunting season's around the corner, bro.
I've got to stock up too.
Yeah.
I'm the worst about like giving everything away. You're bad too.
Yeah.
Like I know you're bad. You gave me one of your first ones when we first met.
That was actually probably the first MKC that ever, like, because I sold one the next day to Jody from Kafaru.
Mm-hmm.
And I sold one to a guy on the course because he lost a bet with me, and so he had to buy it.
That's awesome.
We met on the chairlift and shot together walking down the hill. Jess and I didn't know anyone. That was in 2020, COVID year tack.
Yeah.
And it was Big Sky.
Because I was sitting in my booth with like my mask on.
Yep.
You like came over.
Yep, exactly. And Jess and I shot the course with these people we met on the chairlift. Guy happened to be a lineman from a different state, so we had that in common.
Yeah.
We shot the course, and we got to the end, and there was the rabbit. And he was like, "Hey, if I shoot that rabbit in the eye, can I get a free knife?" And I was like, "Sure, but if you miss the rabbit entirely," because he's just shooting at the head.
Yeah.
I said, "If you miss entirely, you have to pay full price." And sure as shit, he shanked the shot and missed the rabbit entirely. And he came back to tack this year, 3 years later, telling us how many elk and deer he'd been through. We actually have video of it. We're going to post it. He shaved hair off his arm. He's like, "I haven't sharpened this thing." Like, and he comes back every year and he's just like stoked about what's going on. But it's just super cool. But yeah, the knife that I gave you the first day was the first knife that we like sent out or gave out or anything like when we went to an event. And Brandon actually had launched the website the night before as we were driving into town.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so when Jess and I were pulling into Big Sky, he called and he's like, "Hey, man," because we weren't even business partners yet.
The website's live.
Yeah, he called and he's like, "Your website's live." I'm like, all right, sweet. And then the next morning when I met you was like, all right, we're doing this. Like, we're going to start this thing. And that was like, basically that was day one.
Yeah.
Of MKC. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool. Yeah. I mean, you guys are going to you guys are going to skyrocket in this space too. It's not like you're not refined to just the archery umbrella, you know. And even within the archery umbrella, it's like, you know, there's like bows and then there's arrows and there's like all these subcategories. Like knives are everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, even just like the amount of times Sharon will like grab one of my good knives, like open a Amazon box. I'm like, babe, don't use a good one.
Yeah.
You know, like use one of the Cutco ones or something, you know.
You know a guy that can sharpen them all, though. So.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a good year, though, I think.
Well, I'm hoping to see a bunch of those things bloody for sure. Bunch of those knives.
I'm pretty simplistic. Like I'm usually like, even when I'm at the tack, I'm normally in my, you know, my range pants. I'm normally, you know, I've got my bino harness, but like with my knives, I mean, I don't take a whole lot. I normally like those two last year, because I think I sent the Triumphs back in December, didn't I? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Or was it later than that?
I think it was a little later.
Because had already done the whole year with them?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
they were.
It was like, it was after, because you had done a ton with them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you started right out of the gate. We got you that one, and you started right out of the gate in Alberta last year.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, damn, he got off to a fast start. Because I think you had a moose, you had an elk.
And a mule deer.
And a mule deer, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was like, I think August. You got that knife from us like 2 days before you left.
Oh,
and
that's right.
6 days later, it had been through 3 animals. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
John doesn't screw around.
Last year was long. My ring finger and my pinky on both my hands like froze up last year. Like I was kind of like this by whitetail season from holding hide, you know?
Oh,
like,
really?
Yeah, from just skinning so I love the breakdown process. So like if I'm with a friend and he whacks one, I'm just like, get out of the way, dude. like I don't trust you in there.
Yeah.
like get out of the way.
That's awesome.
But yeah, they worked freaking so perfect. And now I haven't had one person come back and be like, you know, I got the Triumph, but I don't like it. Like,
yeah,
I have never heard that.
Yeah.
Like everyone's just like, I got this one. I'm waiting for that one or whatever.
It's so cool getting the pictures, and, you know, people will tag both of us in them, and just, it's cool that people take the time, and they do the same thing with a bow or whatever, but like, that's the coolest moment maybe of their year, maybe of their life. Like when they have an elk down and they've been thinking about a hunt for their entire life, or for sure during that year, it's their most exciting moment of their life. And they actually take the time and have the thought process in that moment to go, oh, I want to get a picture with a knife in there, or I want to get a picture with this PSE bow, this levitate, and I'm going to send it to John, or I'm going to send this picture to Josh of the knife. Like they're in the middle of their best moment and they think to do that, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, unless you've like had a child come into the world that you've been there, like getting your first elk down is like got to be right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first deer I saw like pile up. I just couldn't. I mean, I don't know what your body does to go into convulsions like that, but like, I mean, it just goes into a shaking frenzy that you just cannot stop. And
I have the best video of Hank, and Brandon was there when this happened, but Hank shot his first bear when he was 12. He remained super calm. We had this long stalk. I kept trying to get him set up with the scope, but it was raining and he couldn't find it in the scope, and like bear would wander off. We just kept stalking it. We were within like 100 yards the whole time, following this bear, following it, and I finally get him set up. And again, he's super calm, collected, shoots this bear. You know, bear runs, stops for a second, walks out. Hank puts one more in him, and the bear rolls down the mountain. And I turn the video to Hank, and he just breaks into full body convulsions. Like,
I don't know. Do you think that's like, you know, like the glow sticks when you pop them? Do you think that's like when that happens as a hunter, that's when you are officially hooked? That's like Dracula's freaking poison going in you, and now you're just like a
the
blood
endorphin
sucker.
dump is just something broke in your head.
Yeah, I think when that happens, you're officially a hunting fanatic.
Yeah.
Like if you ever go full convulsion mode, you're never getting out of it.
And
you're
I can say
for sure.
It's a good point, because I think that was the moment, because he had shot a couple like does before, and he'd even shot a small buck, but I don't know what it was, the stock, all the elements, everything leading up to it. It was a really pretty hard day. All to that, like, I think the moment just built to that, and like you say, at that point, like that's an infection that he'll never. There's not enough penicillin for.
Yeah,
he's a hunter forever at that point.
Yeah. I love, like, that's when being a mentor. So I'm pretty upset about this topic, because I was the keynote speaker for the Pope and Young convention, and I spoke, my whole talk was about mentorship, the word mentorship. And I pretty much timelined every important part of my life that has literally like paved a direction to bring me to where I am. And I had 10 people that were all mentors. It started with my grandfather. You know, the first time he had me sitting in his lap, 9 years old, went out on a foggy morning in Natchez, Mississippi. And, you know, all of a sudden I saw this fan come up through the fog. You know, he had a box call. He was calling, kind of wrapped around me. And then, you know, had me look down that barrel and told me, you know, when that bead's on his head, let me know. And so that was like the beginning of it. And then my uncle became the mentor from like the archery side. And I went through this timeline, like Matt McPherson was one of them, you know, for sure. And Joel Maxfield was one of them. And John Barklow is actually one, because, you know, with Barklow, I said that, you know, Barklow taught me a really important part of mentorship, which was the, you know, team. Like, because when me and John and Stump all hunted together, you know, it was really obvious, like this team community that, with me never being in the military, I'd never like really grasped that like brotherhood, because I've always kind of been a loner. You know, I like to hunt alone. I like to work out alone. My whole office and my dojo, like there's two of them, but both of them are like, I'm like alone. Yeah. I need that. So I just walked through that whole mentorship aspect of this thing that we're in. And it's like so critical that's what we all strive to become. Is we all need to be a mentor. And through that whole thing, when I got to the very end, I actually issued a challenge to the membership of the Pope and Young Club, because I said, you know, I'm like, you know, there's some clear statistics about a decline in hunting license sales now that the COVID bump is like slowed down. So, you know, there's always concern if our numbers are going down. Right. So I like issued this challenge of just take one person. Like you take one person and, you know, and they get the convulsions. Right. Well, once they turn zombie mode, well, now they can go teach someone else, you know? Right. And it's like, and that's how we're going to grow. We're not going to grow because you're better than this guy, or we're not going to grow because you're giving this guy better information than me. No. Right. We're going to grow when you take time off your schedule to go mentor someone. Yeah, that's when I was growing up, because my dad didn't hunt, there was two guys specifically in town, and I look back on it and it's pretty wild, because we didn't really have like that close of a connection of some kind, like they weren't family or whatever, but I think I asked them enough at like basketball games and stuff like about their hunting that they finally just offered to take me. Yep. And, you know, Bruce West, you know, guy that took me bow hunting and taught me about hunting elk. He would pick me up in the morning and drop me off at our house, and like just a random guy in town, you know, and he would take me hunting. And then, you know, Rick Dunkerley, who taught me to make knives, he was my little league baseball coach, you know, and he was an outfitter in town, and he's the one that invited me up to make my first knife when I was 11. And, yeah. So like, you know, that mentor stuff is
it can really change people's lives. I mean, everything I'm doing today is really because of that.
If everyone out there wants to like give back to what I've given, take one person hunting with you one time this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do it one time. Because, like, here's the thing. If my grandfather and my uncle wouldn't have done that for me, there would be no Nock On.
Right.
There's no way. If Bruce wouldn't have done that, there's a very good chance there is no MKC.
Right.
Because, you know, once again, the common denominator of it all is the primal thing that comes out of you during that, like, you know, hunter-gatherer moment that happens on a hunt. Like, you know, if it weren't for those two mentors of ours taking a kid that honestly was probably being pesty.
Right. Yeah.
There's no Nock On, there's no MKC.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
So like all of us right now that have the ability to mentor someone, if we do, then who knows what the industry is like, what brands will come down the road. And honestly, maybe the big thing is we convert someone from mainstream that all of a sudden now, you know, which Rogan's obviously the biggest, right? I mean, Joe's the biggest for us for sure.
Yep.
But let's say we get someone in there that just like 100% has the right approach for the mainstream to accept that hunting and knowing where your food comes from is a very, very, you know, important part of this ecosystem.
Right.
You know, so it's all going to happen from one person going, you know, from one person going. The amount of women that go out and like go on a hunt, you know, their husband puts in for them and they kind of go just because, you know, but then all of a sudden, like the bug gets them. Right. I see that at TAC. You know, I say it all the time. The ladies of TAC are on a 3-year program. Year one is I really would just kind of wanted a nice hike.
Dude, you're defining my wife.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm going to tell you.
3 years ago, she walked along.
Yep. And first it's the walk along, and then the next year is they got a hand-me-down or they kind of got a bow. They're not going to shoot every shot. They're going to walk up, and they're just like, we're just out there to still get the hike, but I'll fling at a couple of the big ones. Yep. And then year 3 comes on, and some of these ladies are beating up on their dudes.
No, Jess outshot everyone in the group at Big Sky. It was her first ever shooting at TAC. Like she had walked 2 years in a row.
That's awesome.
And I need to go back in my text. I have a photo from her when I was in bear camp with Derek Wolf. She sent me a photo, a selfie, and she has you standing on the screen in the living room with a string, you know, your string, like showing, you know, how to like release and everything you're doing. Yep. And she's like, I'm doing school of Nock, and she's home alone.
I know.
Doing like, that.
You said, you go, hey bro, I don't know how I feel about the fact my wife's home alone and
spending time with you.
She sends me a selfie and like, you're on the TV in the background.
Like, no, I wasn't very stoked about it. Like, no, it's, but she did all that, and then I came home. I helped her set her tape, and 6 days later, we were at Big Sky, and she's shooting at 80 yards and like smoking them. It was unbelievable. And you're right, but it was a 3-year process. The first year, she didn't know anything about it. Walked along. The second year, last year, she was like, I think I want to maybe do this. And then by the time this year rolled around, she was like pressuring me, when are you going to get that bow set up? When are you going to get that bow set up?
Yeah, you're done now.
And now she goes out and shoots by herself. Like,
yeah, women are the best students. Like for me, the ego isn't there. That they are robots when it comes to like listening to instruction and focusing on the fine skills. It's pretty awesome. The cool thing about like now, obviously there's a lot more information out there, but what is cool as well is there's brands like MKC. And there's brands like Nock On, because here's the thing. I was on TV for 6 years, and, you know, I wasn't like, you had Bill Jordan, you had Michael Waddell, you had Lee and Tiff. I mean, like you had the Primos, like if you weren't in there, you were kind of like fighting for one of those tiers.
Right.
Whereas now, you know, if your heart's there, and you're doing it for the right reason, like these brands can come, and it gives us the ability to not see. The thing is, like, when I was trying to first get Nock On going, everybody was telling me what I had to do. And the thing that they were telling me is you need to pull the throttle way back on this like tech stuff.
Right.
And, you know, on the network, they were sending me like new network rules where they're like 3.5 minutes top for education, period. And I'm like, I would rather have my hunt 3 minutes.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's cool that right now in today's era, we're able to do that. We're able to have our own podcasts, like, because with the right person, they're passion projects. You know,
right.
For you and Brandon, MKC is a passion project.
Right.
Nock On was a passion project for me, giving back. I always wanted to be able to give back to the sport that did good for me. I always wanted to give back. And I'm lucky now, the partners I picked to work with, I'm working with them because I'm liking them. I'm not telling people to buy stuff because that's the only way I'm getting my income. There is nothing.
Right.
And that's that. Like, actually on the way here, I just got called because our quiver won Quiver of the Year for Outdoor Life.
Oh, cool.
And I mean, I was like, well, this is freaking awesome, because I literally just worked on building a quiver that was based on things that I wished all these other quivers had together.
Right.
You know, and the Levitate was the same way. So, I mean, it's cool that, you know, you can have companies and people to be able to now do a podcast, tell their story, and in the end, let the community understand who we are. Because, I mean, you guys have an awesome community. Yeah. We have an awesome community. I know there's crossover, obviously, but it's because they, you know, we're being honest with what our passion is. And I think when people see that, you know, it's kind of like after this last tack, and I saw another person with like bad arrow flight, and, you know, and I was just like, dude, like, there's middle ground. Like, how long have you, and the guy's like, it has been so frustrating trying to switch over this year, because then I had to work on my own stuff. My shop didn't really want to mess with this type of thing. And I was just like, dude, like, you're missing some of the awesome fun part. And so when I like went out, got back from Utah and literally went out in my yard and like just made this plea to everybody, it was insane the amount of people that were like, that like we can feel through the phone that you are so like passionate about this, that it just immediately made people want to watch, because they knew, like, I'm talking about something that I'm genuinely wanting to help you with. I'm not trying to sell you. I'm not trying to hurt. I'm not trying to make you go backwards. I just like, let's all go forwards, like use all this information. Yeah. So I think with mentorship, with the right mindset, I think there's going to be some amazing brands come into the hunting community that are going to help people build a great story and hopefully just deliver a really crystal clean image to the mainstream, because we do need that too.
That's important. Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate it. I know you gotta head north. Lots of plane troubles led you here about 6 hours late today. So it's a bummer, because I know Jess wanted to shoot with you, and we'll have you back out to the shop. We'll do some shooting and maybe grill some steaks next time. But
I know.
But poor Barclow's out here waiting for you. Your taxi, John Barclow taxi ride.
Yeah. Thank you, John, for waiting.
So thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's definitely an honor. It's been
fun, Josh.
Working with you. And
it's been amazing seeing you guys. Like, you know, it's cool. I'm never going to get rid of that first knife.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right. See you.
See you.